Greetings, Augies. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with Ask Dave, episode 118. Today we look at a radio MFJ loaned me to test. MFJ has become the sole legitimate importer of the Xiegu X5105, a full-featured QRP HF rig, meaning only 5 watts output on CW, data, and single sideband. I know I'm mispronouncing Xiegu, but that's what it could sound like if it were an English word. This is a QRP rig with many features, mostly on the receive side, but with interesting transmit capabilities too. If it looks a bit like the Elecraft KX2 and KX3, I suspect there's a reason. This is a Chinese radio that competes directly with these at about half the price. Also, this radio competes directly with the old high-end QRP standby, the Yaesu FT817ND, at about the same price. I didn't know this until recently, but these fully featured QRP rigs aren't just there to grab the QRP market. Rather, in much of the world, there's a two-tier licensing system. And the lower grade, sometimes called the foundation license, limits the holder to 5 or 10 watts or so, and they must use commercial equipment. And Americans are rather unique in being allowed a full 1,500 watts of power. Many countries limit the power to a small fraction of that. So this is a world-oriented radio. At first I thought this was just another QRP radio, but after using it for several days, I've changed my mind. The receiver is fully featured. The transmitter part, while only 5 watts out, incorporates a rather amazing internal antenna tuner that so far has successfully loaded any antenna I've put on it. And it not only has a meter that can read SWR, it can give you a plot, an actual plot of SWR across a large slice of the band you're operating on. It gives you all bands from 160 through 6, an amazing amount of coverage. So let's take a look at the radio. It's a double conversion superhet with the final part being done in changeable firmware, so it meets the definition of software-defined radio. It comes with both a hand mic and an internal mic. It has an internal keyer that can take a straight key or paddles. The IF is available to use for a spectrum display. It has an internal speaker, or you can plug one in or plug in headphones. Note that if you use headphones, you need to put the audio amp into headphone mode so it doesn't blast your ears off. So let me just list some of the features of this radio. Input preamp or attenuator, CW or CW reverse, AM, upper and lower sideband, and FM. Noise blanker, an effective noise filter, receiver incremental tuning, adjustable power out in half-watt increments from half a watt to 5 watts, an antenna tuner that actually works, memories for frequencies, 2 VFOs, A and B, an accessory port for data modes, and internal PSK31 decoder that actually works, and to boot, an internal rechargeable 3.8 amp hour 12-volt battery that I suspect makes up most of the weight. Let's see, what did I leave out? Operates over a wide temperature range, outstanding frequency stability for a radio in this class, can operate on external voltages from 9 to 15 volts. Oh yeah, CW keyer memories too. Well, okay, how well does it work? I listened around casually and liked the sound of 80 meter sideband. It has a cool tuning feature in that you can change the VFO step size very quickly. You can change the bands by pushing these buttons on top. They're right where your fingers find them. I also liked how it sounded on CW. There are several filters you can apply using the menu system. So, I connected my little key and answered a CQ from K5OGX on 40 meters. You can see from my sloppy copy that I need to get more CW practice. But he stayed with me in my 5 watts. I found that 5 watts on CW can get you some great contacts fairly easily. So, I have to say it works well on CW. To test it on sideband, I set up a QSO with my wife. She's a tech, so we picked 10 meters. I put her in front of my FTDX 3000, running 100 watts to the MFJ cobweb, which is about 10 feet off the ground and is horizontally polarized. I have an ancient Radio Shack 10-meter mag mount mobile antenna, which I plopped on the roof of my truck, meaning vertically polarized, and ran the cable to the rig on the seat beside me. I used a separate 8 amp hour 12 volt battery for power because I'd run down the internal battery. I tuned the radio to the same frequency as indicated on the FTDX 3000 and found that no further tuning was necessary. I was on exactly the right frequency. I noticed that when I called her from our driveway, her powerful signal actually caused audio distortion in my received signal. But as I drove down the hill, that went away and her speech was perfectly clear. Now, I note that this QSO was essentially a combination of ground wave and direct wave, neither of which are great on 10 meters in mountainous territory. I was out of line of sight for most of the trip down to Kelowna, 7 miles away. Her signal got weaker, but remained readable for the entire trip down the canyon. And my signal got weaker for her too, but she was able to understand me all the way to Kelowna. I turned around there, figuring I was past the limit for 10-meter ground wave, and knowing I wouldn't be back in the direct wave until I was, another 10 miles or so further toward Montrose. All in all, I was impressed. I noticed that the cable from my 8 amp hour battery to the rig picked up some ignition noise that the noise blanker wouldn't touch. However, when I used the rig's internal battery, the noise went away. So if you do use an external power source while mobile, make sure you use RFI suppression techniques such as winding the cord through a toroid or using ferrite beads. And while I'm on the subject of noise, when listening with headphones, there's a constant high-frequency hiss that gets annoying after a while. It's there even when the audio is turned all the way down. Let me play that for you. Here's the hiss when the radio should be completely silent. When I turn up the volume 1 notch, you can hear the normal HF background noise. I'd like to see this fixed in the next version of this radio. Okay, let's just run through the menus. You access the menu system with a short press of the menu button. The menu number blinks. Use the main tuning knob to run through all 9 menu levels. Each menu level has up to 4 options. Let's follow along in the manual, and I recommend you keep the manual handy because Xiegu's abbreviations are a bit obscure. Menu level 1 has 4 options. A equals B copies the current frequency to the background VFO. SPL means split. Split allows you to work a station on one frequency while transmitting on another, which is useful for DXing and contesting. NR turns on digital noise reduction. When you turn it on, you can set the level from 0 to 10 using the main knob. I find a setting around 5 works nicely. NTH is the level of the notch filter, set similarly to the noise reduction. Did you notice that there's room enough on the screen to use more than 2 or 3 letter abbreviations? I did too. It would help with intelligibility if they could add more letters to these abbreviations. Menu level 2 has 4 functions. Pressing AGC cycles through fast, automatic, slow, and off. I find the slow setting is a little too fast for my tastes, but there it is. FIL gives you filter selections. These are bandpass filters. 6 kHz is for listening to AM or shortwave broadcast stations. 2.4 is for single sideband, and 0.5 kHz is for Morse. Although these are automatically set by mode, you can change the settings if you wish. SRM stands for Scan Receiving Mode, Memory Scan. SWR says SWR scanning, which is a whole nother thing from scanning memories. In this mode, you can create an SWR scan graph across the band. This feature is impressive and shows the region where the tuner is operating. Menu level 3 has 4 functions. M into V moves the memory frequency to the VFO. MW, or memory write, does the opposite, storing the VFO memory in the current channel. MC clears the channel. And tag lets you tag the memory with a name. Menu level 4 has 3 options. BK stands for break-in and allows sending CW by simply pressing the key when in CW mode. Key chooses a straight key or paddles. KSP says automatic key rate selection. Better phrasing would be set keyer speed. Menu level 5 has 4 options. RE1, 2, and 3 set keyer memories. CSN, with a long press, takes you to an editor to put your call sign on the turn-on splash screen. Menu level 6 has 4 functions. SQL lets you set and turn on the squelch, useful for FM work. CMP turns speech compression, either on or off, no levels are available. MTR switches the transmit meter between SWR meter and power out. VLT changes the battery indicator from a simple graphic to the actual voltage. Menu level 7 has 4 options. CHG turns the external charging function on and off. Normally you would leave this on. The rig will charge the internal battery when presented with an external voltage of 13 volts DC or more. A simple external 12-volt battery won't do it. MSL selects either the internal mic for walkie-talkie type operation or external mic for normal handheld mic use. IFO turns the IF output on and off. This is the one you use for a spectrum scope. VER shows the firmware version, date, and time. Menu 8 has a single option, MDN, which stands for digital modem. This turns the PSK31 reception option on and off. While on, you can select CAR for carrier tracking or AFC for frequency tracking. I think the automatic frequency controller, AFC, probably will seem more natural if you've had PSK31 experience. Note there is no PSK31 transmit function via this feature. The way the rig tunes PSK31 is interesting. You must move the spectrogram back and forth with the tuning knob to match it to the indicator. Menu 9 has 2 functions. AFF turns on the digital audio filter, and with HPF you can adjust the high-pass filter cutoff, and LPF does the same for the low end. SPK puts the audio output of either speaker mode, which is loud, or headphone mode, which is not loud, to where you plug in the speaker or the headphone. Now, there is another menu. You get to this one by pressing the menu button longer. Different menu entirely. I don't recommend messing with this set of functions unless you have strong reasons. I have heard it is possible to brick the radio if you set some of these wrong. Best not to touch. Note that this radio can be used for digital modes with an interface such as the Signal Link or similar. You'll have to get the accessory plug. I haven't seen this type of plug pattern before, so you may have to look around to find one. You can also use the microphone input, which might be much easier. Let's take a look at a couple more things. First, the instructions say that the external power input must be 13.8 volts DC to charge the internal battery. Here I have a variable power supply set up to provide external power to the X5105. As the external voltage crosses 13 volts, suddenly the external power source starts charging the internal battery. Note the constant current of about 0.44 amps when charging, somewhat independent of the external voltage. Now let's look at power out. This is going through the MFJ 849 SWR/power meter on its way to the dummy load here. It shows right at about 5 watts regardless of the voltage input. This is different from many QRP and indeed many 100-watt radios. The output transistors in many radios receive the supply voltage directly, allowing the voltage to rise with the rising supply voltage. But the X5105 doesn't do that. It gives you about 5 watts across the board. Now, note that the internal battery will power it at 5 watts without any external supply at all. Now, MFJ is still getting set up for this radio. I had to go to the Xiegu website at CQXIEGU.com, which is in English, to find the most recent owner's manual. The most recent firmware is available there too. All the MFJ site has is a quick setup guide as of the making of this video. This will improve with time. Also, while you are visiting the Xiegu site, note that they also sell a companion 125-watt amplifier and a nice pan adapter for the radio, neither of which MFJ yet imports. Now let's talk about the price. MFJ asks $669 for this rig. While this is only half of what Elecraft wants for their portables, it's still a pricey rig. It is in the same price range as the Xiegu FT817ND, a very comparable rig for only $30 more at Ham Radio Outlet. The 817 has been a mainstay QRP rig for years and is well polished. However, it doesn't have the same form factor as the Xiegu and the Elecraft. So which should you get? Well, the Xiegu has a bigger screen with more information than the Xiegu, plus has that impressive antenna tuner. The Xiegu, on the other hand, also covers 2 meters and 70 centimeters, though with only a few watts, so it's essentially like a handheld in that matter. Selecting a rig is a highly personal choice. I do not, repeat, do not recommend QRP sideband for a first HF rig. The power is just too low. But maybe for a second rig for portable operations. Operating QRP single sideband takes skill and a pretty good knowledge of how the HF bands behave, which is why I recommend using a standard 100-watt radio for your first radio. So what's the bottom line? This is a cool, portable, backpackable radio. But now that I've reviewed it, I need to send it back to MFJ. I'm going to miss it. In channel news, I've never tried live streaming, but there's no time like the present. I'm thinking of doing a once-a-week live stream for a half hour or so to teach Morse code. I want to do it as something you can pick up or leave off anywhere. Also, I'll keep my FTDX 3000 tuned to a CW frequency, so we might be able to try some real QSOs during the live stream. All live streams are recorded for posterity on YouTube. On my channel page, under the Community tab, there's a poll you can participate in. Leave comments about the best day and time for a live stream like this, which I would do once a week. Speaking of live streaming, be sure to tune in to w5kub.com on Tuesday evening at 9 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time or 6 p.m. U.S. Pacific Time. Tom has a great show, and I'm on the show frequently. Check out dcasler.com/support. That page has leads to the tip jar and to Patreon. It also has a link to a page I have with links to Amazon items featured in my videos. If you buy via those links, your price doesn't change, but I do get a bit of a finder's fee. And it helps others find these videos if you like, share, and subscribe. Once you subscribe, click the bell. And feel very free to leave comments. I read all first-level comments. That means comments that are directly in reply to the video. If you comment on an old comment, YouTube sometimes forgets to tell me. And thanks for being an Augie, one of the followers of the OG channel itself. Until we next meet, 73. My next video will look more closely at some of the test equipment I've acquired. Pick another video from my playlists and keep watching.